Hi folks, and welcome to another episode of Maritimer Outdoors. Today I am going to set up the scope on a new Ruger 1022. We will adjust the eye relief, the positioning of it for the eye relief, and then we're going to level it. Then we're going to go out and we're going to bore scope it, and then we're going to dial it in. So let's get into it.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to level the gun in the vise, and for that I have a Wheeler bore sighting system that comes with the bubble level. So I want to level the gun, then I can level the scope in the rings onto the gun. It's important to level the scope to the gun so that if you're shooting from a bench or a resting position, any adjustments that are made on the vertical and the horizontal have the effect that you expect them to have. If my scope isn't level, and it's not as critical out, as accurate as this gun's going to be, 100 yards at the most, maybe 200 if we're pushing it, until we upgrade some things, obviously. But mounting that scope is just going to give us a little better accuracy and a little better repeatability, and we're going to have the effects that we expect to have. So the scope is definitely too far forward and not level. I mean, they just slap it on at the department store that I bought it at. So we're going to bring it back one set, just so that the eye relief is where it needs to be as I naturally bring the gun up to my shoulder. So we're going to bring the scope back one, and then we're going to go from there. If you are kind of new to doing this, you've never done it before, you give it to someone else to do, we're going to unscrew the rings, and every ring is different. For this particular type of ring, we'll be unscrewing these two screws. So anyway, I'm going to move them back now. All right, so now what I've done is I've spread our rings apart somewhat, and I've just finger tightened each ring to the base. Now we want to evenly torque these up to, I don't even know what the torque spec is, but I want it to be even. If one gets tightened before the other, it can cock the scope on the base and bring it off the bore line of the barrel. So we want to evenly tighten these. Right now I have the scope itself loose. I'll tighten my base down to where I need it. I've spread it apart so I have more room on this particular base type. I've got more room to slide my scope back and forth. And then we'll torque. They do give a spec, and I don't have it here, but it's inside. I believe it's 35 foot-pounds, maybe even 18, less than 35. It's not a whole lot. You don't want to damage the scope ring, or the scope barrel, sorry. So I'm tightening this down evenly, a little bit at a time, making sure that we're just finger tight to start, and that I've taken all the slack out of it, and then it's seated down in the two grooves that the bolt for each side of the rings, they just clamp. It's just this is a independent piece, and then the rest of the ring is on another claw on the other side, and they just clamp tight. And I'm not going to put blue Loctite on this. I probably should, but we'll torque it down so it doesn't move. And this is, again, this is a 50-yard gun, right? It's a 22 long rifle caliber, so I don't have to be super crazy with it. But we'll torque these down evenly, and then we'll start dialing in the eye relief on the gun. All right, I've tightened my rings down about 1/8 of a turn at a time each one, and torqued them down fairly tight with just a flathead screwdriver. Before we set eye relief, I need to level the gun in the vise. We'll tighten this feller down. Find adjustments here on the stock, so I can adjust my level using those two fine movement things back here. I'm pretty happy with that. All right, so rings are tight. Let's check eye relief one last time, set it up, dial it in, and then we will equally clamp down these hex socket machine screws. So now I have marked my eye relief. We will set the scope on the rings, and we could lap the rings and all this if we were super concerned about accuracy, but it's just a quick and dirty demo, if you will. So I'm not obviously going to lap my rings because it's a 22. And this optic is not the most intense either. I'm going to just take up on the slack here on the top of the ring clamps. Leave enough slack that I can rotate to level it. As I snug these down, I want to make sure there's even spacing on either side. I don't want to put uneven pressure on that scope. So we're not going to get a set of calipers out or anything, but eyeball it. Make sure there's even spacing on either side of that clamp, and that we're clamping down evenly. We're not cocking the scope on the rifle. I will now level the scope to the gun. And this Tipton vise comes in very handy. I'm sure there are vices out there that are even more steady, more precise, but this Tipton one is for what I do, it works well. Okay, so we have leveled the gun to the vise. Now we've leveled the scope to the gun. Now we will tighten down the scope by clamping those rings down. All right, I've clamped it going kind of a diagonal here, 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 in that kind of orientation, just to take up any. We're going to do like one end and then I cross over, kind of like you do on tires, almost like a cross pattern, but that way you're not inducing like a cross torsion in there as well. Trying to keep everything even torque wise and compression wise on those clamps. We're also doing a visual to make sure that we have an even gap on both sides of each clamp, and we do, and I'm happy with it. So that is now secure. Now we have to go out in the field and we will bore sight the rifle. So for the laser bore sighter, I have a reflective target. We're gonna put a magnetized laser on the bore of the rifle barrel. Go down range. I don't know if I want to sight this in for 50 or 100. We'll go down 100 and dial it in. So now I've attached my Wheeler magnetic base laser to the bore of the rifle barrel. We'll aim it at the center of our reflective target down there. Get that lined up and steadied. Then I'll dial my scope into that on a high power. And that should get us close to being on paper. From there I can dial the rifle into as close as possible, and we can get some set points for accuracy from there. Well, I'm gonna have to bring it in to about 50 yards because I can't see the laser on the reflector. So 50 yards it is. 50 yards is a lot better. I can actually see the laser now in the scope on 9 power. So I'm going to just adjust the scope to match the laser, and then we'll be bore sighted. We will bore sight it, and I'll clean it, and then we'll do a video on dialing it in on paper, and I'll use a different, instead of using the bag, I've got a front bench rest that I'll use. So let's dial this in. I'm actually genuinely impressed by how on this is windage wise. All I did was just adjust everything evenly, tighten everything evenly. Windage is spot on. I didn't have to touch it. Elevation had to come down a lot, and we're on center, dialed right in. My crosshairs at 50 yards are lined up with the cut of the crown, and we will see how it looks on paper after I clean the barrel. It's important. I want to clean it. You just want a small amount of just residue of gun oil in there, not even, just enough to keep corrosion down. And I'm talking, you pull a patch through until nothing shows anymore, and then clean it and keep it clean. We don't want any machining oil in there when we fire, so I don't want to take that risk. I will take this home, clean it. Windage and elevation are spot on at 50 yards, so I'm happy. And the Wheeler laser, I've used it already before, works great. Obviously it's not the most accurate thing. If you could put a laser, buy one of those chamber lasers, it's probably a little bit more accurate than this, because I don't know how, I mean, Ruger does good quality work, but I don't know how plumb those crowns are on these, 10-22. It's a cheap rifle, cheap little 22. So I don't know how accurate they are with their machining at the face of the crown. So I'm very glad I cleaned it before I fired it. Not a big deal, but just, you know, that does not look like, that's definitely not machine oil. Maybe it is. Maybe the machine oil just gathered. Maybe this has been sitting around for a bit. It's just gathered dust in the barrel on the machine oil from however they make the rifling on these ones, if it's a pull through or if it's a machine thing. I imagine it's just a pull through. Anyway, so I'm gonna pull a couple more swabs through, and we'll have a clean barrel, and we can put it on paper. So we've cleaned that. Now we're in the truck. We're gonna head back out to the spot that I was at. I'm gonna set up a few color change targets, and we will dial this thing in at 50 yards is what I'm gonna have it zeroed for. All right, we've got our 50 yards. It's a little windy, there's a little snow. So Ventrest is set up. This should keep me, especially this close, on target. And then the only variable is adjusting the scope, and of course the accuracy of the barrel. So this is first time shooting. We cleaned it out, made sure it was chamber and the rifling and the barrel were clear. So we will now load our first round and have at it. Safety. We're 2 inches low, 2 inches right. I'm going to take a second shot for verification. That was really far right and really up, so I'll do another one. Okay. 2 consistent shots, 2 inches low, 2 inches right. I think my second shot was just a bit lower. So we're gonna go, these are 1/4 inch or 1/4 MOA adjustments. So 4 clicks is 1 inch at 100 yards. 8 clicks is 1 inch at 50 yards. So we're low, I have to come up. Basically, I'm gonna come up 8 to start with. That should bring me halfway to where I need to be. I'm gonna come left 8 clicks, which should bring me halfway. We'll take a shot. And that has had the desired effect. So I'm going to come up another 8. And let's see how my windage is. Elevation spot on. I'm actually happy with the repeatability of the scope. Windage, same thing. I've got to come left another 8 and I should be spot on. So there's 8. I got my safety on. All right, action's clear and locked open. we'll go have a look real quick. I think that right there is our second shot that went a little wild. So this is a Federal Champion blue box. We'll do a few shots up here now that we're fairly well on, and we'll see what we get for grouping. Okay, let's have a look at that. They're all consistently about a ½ inch low, so I'm going to come up 4 clicks, see what that does. Empty. I'm happy with that. 50 yards, we'll go have a look. Right, my first shots were down here, over here. I think some of these, I made 4 up and we got into here. So at 50 yards for a little 1022, I'm quite happy with that. That's decent. Actually, that'd be more like 4 inches at 100. With the barrel that we have being a short barrel, you know, it's all standard equipment. You can make these far more accurate with some aftermarket gear, but for, you know, so for closed-in rabbit and squirrel, this is going to be very much acceptable, and I'm happy with it. Be a fun little gun and a cheap way to plink around. So awesome. We'll do a whole series on this gun over probably a couple of years. I don't want to spend a pile of money on it right away, but I am looking at a barrel, a different trigger. The trigger on these quite heavy, which does affect accuracy. I'm looking at Timony and I think Volquartsen. No, there's a couple others I was looking at. That's kind of what I'm looking at, and I'm going to set it up for hunting. I'll be doing probably a lightweight barrel instead of a bolt barrel, but we'll see. And maybe the Magpul Hunter stock eventually. That might be as far as I go with it. Maybe a little. No, the scope's good. I'm happy with the scope. So Viridian, new company out of the States. I think everything's made in China on it, but for, you know, for 1022. All right, guys. Well, if you found that fun or interesting, please feel free to like and subscribe. Isn't that funny? Where I decided to set up the table, there's a shotgun shell in the snow. If you liked it, just like and subscribe. If you got any criticisms, I'm all ears. I'm sure I've made a couple of mistakes here in my methodology. But this is the way I understand it, and the way I've always done it on my bigger caliber rifles. This is how I run it in. Bore scope first, then you take a shot with my bigger rifles at 100 yards, and then I just move the reticle to where that shot went. And that's the easiest. You're not doing three shots at a time and adjusting. Take a shot, put the reticle where the shot went. And it works. It's easy. Your 2-3 shots, your gun's dialed in. Especially if you've bore sighted it first like I did here. And this is what I've done with all my other rifles. My 6.5 PRC Seiko 20. This is exactly how I dialed it in. And this fall, it was whitetail headshot at 100 and what it was, 164 or 180 yards or something. So it works for me. It might not work for everybody, but anyway, thanks guys.